spoke about this morning. It's really around something that DEST, before it was DEWA, funded the parent-family liaison positions, and it wasn't an expensive exercise. It was culturally sensitive in the communities, and I don't see why a model like that, so it's from the top, the high strategic things, down to the on the ground, thank you nodding, that it is absolutely something that makes a difference. So that's my observations. And the final comment, if we're to see education and parent engagement and parents engaged as the first and enduring teachers are too important just to be the responsibility of education organisations and parent bodies.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I'm putting my point of view from really the PNF. So from a PNF point of view, being engaged with education is difficult because in that school environment, do we, as the PNF, take that challenge on and go into the school and say, well, this is what we're hearing and this is how it should be done? But I guess for me, the key learning was around understanding the difference between involvement in school and engagement in school, in your child's learning, really, I think. Involvement, there's a lot of involvement in school. There are a lot of things that are going on in the school environment that our children are involved in, our parents are involved in, and are happy to be involved in. But when it comes to having the confidence around being engaged in their learning, that's a whole different area. And I think for me, I know that I'm engaged because, well, I'm here. And and I know that I'm engaged because I'm on the PNF at the school. But when I have conversations with other parents who I would have thought would be engaged, and you ask them about, or they say to, oh, we didn't know about whatever it was, and I'll say, well, it was on the intranet. Oh. So how do we, and so it's about the opportunities are there in a lot of cases for parents to be engaged, but how does that opportunity translate into actual involvement or engagement? And I actually see that as part of the challenge, is that for us, well, certainly in my experience, those opportunities have existed, and this morning's conversations or presentations were about engaging parents around. We have Year 7 dinners. We have opportunities for the parents to come along and hear speakers talk to them about transitions and supporting our students through their learning. And everyone has parent-teacher interviews and those sorts of opportunities, but also connecting the extracurricular activities within the school with that engagement. So our school actually encourages parents to be involved in those activities, as well as the teachers who are on staff. So it's a combined effort. So I actually feel quite lucky that my school provides me with all those opportunities. But what I do see is that doesn't happen everywhere. And I guess in some ways, because I have worked in public schools in the ACT as well for a long time, I have seen quite a contrast in terms of that engagement. Some schools do it really, really well, and I know that there are some schools that invite their parents in to have what we call pathways planning interviews with the young people, and they get them to talk about where they want to go and where they want to be, and the parents are there as part of that conversation. But then other schools aren't doing that. So how do we get them all to realise the value of that participation in school? And so I guess from my point of view, I guess I feel lucky that my school provides that, but how can my school and me as a representative of a PNF association assist other schools within our area to develop those programs and opportunities for their parents? And I guess I'm not sure that I have the answer, but it might be about us getting together and engaging amongst ourselves to see what we can do to provide that opportunity.
Thank you.
When I think about AHA, at one level for me, it's revisiting some of the things that I thought I knew, but I'm not sure they always integrate in my practice. And people have referred to, it not to be an add-on when you talk about working with your families, that it isn't something, oh yeah, I must do that, but that it is integrated as part of your plan and that you resource it. So another learning for me was sometimes we pat ourselves on the back and think, oh, we've done that really well and we had this many parents here, or we've done this many things, that you can never really do that. That I think that, I realise I really have to be alert and keep on my heels with that. One of the things I felt I learnt over these 2 days that I didn't expect to, is I want to talk about the tone of the research that's coming out of Australia now. And when I look at the international research, to myself, I refer to any research coming out of the UK as moany, because people usually are moaning about someone like, schools don't do this or parents don't do this, and the discussion doesn't seem to move on. And I find lots of the American stuff at times, because it's in response to legislation rather than just passion, that it doesn't have such an edge. And I feel like I've been exposed in these 2 days to a research that has this tone about a real can-do. And so that's been a real an aha for me, and I feel like I'm part of it, and so that's very exciting. And the other thing that was an aha, and there's a couple of things that in listening to sessions, when I listened to the session yesterday around the Indigenous program, I just feel like, oh, there are things I can do around that, and so you can take something and reshape it, and so that was really exciting. My take home, my bag's so full, I don't know how much I can take home. But for me, the toolkit was really exciting, because I think it has, that's something that in schools that we struggle with, about how you really measure what you're doing and measure it in such a way that you can use the information. So I think that's fantastic. I moved from getting the toolkit in my bag, and I thought, well, actually the web's my resource. That's really what I'm taking home. But you can all be very scared, because I've just decided that you're my community and I'm taking you all home, and you will love Wiley Park. You'll adjust to it, but you're going to love it. And I feel like, and it's not just handing out cards and having the conversation, but for me there was something about these 2 days that I feel like, that's been the creation of a community that I absolutely want to be part of, and that, some of the knowledge that I've gained today is mine, I'm taken with me, and I'm going to use it in my school, and so that's very exciting. My challenge, and I'd be very happy with any of you to help me absolutely any time, 24/7, that's okay. The more work I do with families, and when I say with families, I mean working with my staff and with the students and the parents all together, I feel like that we almost need individual learning programs or individual parent programs. There are some certain, challenges we all have, in our own lives, however you look at it, but there's not only are there language barriers for my families and how I support that in terms of classes and of using interpreters and using translators, but there's also a high turnover in the school. It's a bit of a gateway area, and some years we have 30% turnover. And so when people say we've done that, and I go, yeah, we did, but it's actually a bit of a different group now. So we possibly need to do it or do it in a different way. So I feel like, we need such a range of programs all the time, which means that, my teachers need such a range of programs, and that also means resourcing. But I know that's my biggest challenge, and I've got ideas about how I'll do that, and I need more. And I know with some other people, quite a few people talk about Epstein's work and National Network of Partnership Schools, and I think probably together forming an action team that's formed of some of my community parents, kids and staff, that we develop a program together that we'd evaluate and have to change all the time. So I think maybe that's the way we do that. But I think Helene mentioned this morning, and it comes up in some of the work. It's the voice of the silent, so it's the people we don't see. And I know it's not because they don't care. They might be busy, it's too hard. Certainly for me, if parents taken 4 years to get in the country, they care a lot. They really care a lot. And so I have to be really clear and very proactive of making sure everyone understands that care, even if it isn't expressed in a way that everyone might understand. Anyway, I want to thank you all as part of my new community for the last few days because it's been fabulous. Thank you.
I'm not sure how I got this gig because probably because I was the last person to actually apply to come here. I have started a doctorate, and I suppose it came out of the fact that I was a principal of a secondary school. About 7 years ago, I retired and moved to the Sunshine Coast to really give my own kids some time. And I suppose I then saw it from the other side of the desk in terms of their involvement, because each of them, they have, two of them are dyslexic and one is ADHD. So I had to go and approach teachers from a parent perspective and started to learn. I run a families consultancy business, and principals have asked me into schools, principals that I've known through my connections, to actually assist, and they're very interested in how they can improve parental engagement. But what they see as parental engagement is the number of people who turn up to the P&F. And the whole concept of, I really think it's both of them working together, that it really needs to be led by the principal but also by the P&F. But the problem is the parent bodies in Australia are the best place for this to actually go forward. They really are. However, you've got a little bit of a problem in that the people that have been attracted to Parents and Friends in your schools, there's a culture there of what they did, what traditionally we stand for, what traditionally we do, what traditionally we actually talk about at P&F meetings. So probably the biggest thing that came home to me, and something that I can really take back to the schools that I work with, is there's so much information out there that I didn't know it existed. I only just found the Bureau, and I found that it's only got funding through to June, and I've only just found it. I've only just found partnership brokers that I've never heard of. There's so much information, and the toolkit that has been, really developed to that level is just fantastic. But the people that I talk to don't know it exists, and they're the people on the ground. What I think I can do is get that information out into the communities to start the conversation around a common language. What does it actually mean? Fantastic documents. I just thank you so much for them and the development of them, but nobody knows they're there. So I think that's what I can do in my role. My big aha moment for me in doing a doctorate, I've been Googling for months and never found half this information. Dr. Google didn't get it for me, and lots of other universities as well. Books in libraries are very outdated. What I got today is my literature review for my doctorate. Thank you so much. All in 2 days, that's great. I suppose the other thing I really got was a disruptive innovation from Mary and John. Now, some people would call me a disruptive innovation on a normal day, but I do think that you do have to push the boundaries. I'm very good at that. I've always pushed boundaries. But as parent bodies and as parents and parts of P&Fs, you do need to start to push the boundaries. That's, we're on about more than that. Let's go further and really take up the challenge that we've now been given a mandate for the first time in history, publicly, in terms of government policy. My last statement will be around, I may as well make a political comment. I'm in the political arena of Australia. I do work on the grassroots. I don't work at this level, but I could start it. I'm not sure I'm not the only one who could say I could start a doctorate in how what each of the government departments actually do and what they work with and who they actually look after. But before I've actually finished that doctorate, we'd have a change of government, and then we'd have a change of stationery and a change of name, and I still wouldn't be able to keep up with it. So I suppose if we're going to have any sort of sustained program that is implemented in Australia, we do need to have publicity of what actually has been achieved, and of programs such as the Bureau to continue their work and funding for those things on an ongoing, not on a 4-year tenure.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the graveyard shift, and you are going to do some further work. But first, before you guys get to work, could we just thank these wonderful people for their affirmative action? Now it's your turn, and I thank you for enduring and staying till the end of this particular 2-day symposium, because what's really important about the next bit is a little bit of the feedback, which is why I did do the little bit of bossy stuff and say nobody sit on the padded seats up the back. Anne Crab. So if we could come down, and what we're going to do is have 3 little bit of discussion sessions. And the first little bit of discussion session that we want you to do is similar to what the panel has done, and that's to look about what you may be able to take home and apply to what you do. So I want you to get into groups of 5 or 6. We're going, my time person, I was going to say something else but realised who pays my wages, the lovely Judy here, will... Oh, okay. All right. No. Judy will time you for 5 minutes. Get in a group of 5 or 6 together and talk about what you're going to take home and what you believe is something that is a bit of an aha moment, but also a bit of what you can do in whatever capacity you came today and yesterday for. So 5 minutes, people. It would be really cool if you turned around and talked to other people. Groups of 6 usually do mean that. Does any group desperately need any extra time? Okay, then we might come back if you don't... Oh. I can just ignore that person. We might come back because we do have some things to get through. And in your very constructive groups of 5 and 6 and 12, could we first go to the group up the back, because they're still talking, and ask someone from that group if they would like to report? Thank you.
I don't need a mic, but anyway, we'll go for it. On behalf of our group, the change agents up the back, we liked the PLC model as Elaine had presented, and we're saying that's useful for families that are unserved, but not just the minority groups, but for all families who have to have access to a safe space to learn with their children, and possibly through all our very many new multi-purpose birth facilities.
Okay, second back group.
There are 2 things. I think every parent in the room feels affirmed that they are the advocate for their young people, and they do have the right and responsibility to be involved in the education process of their children. And I also think our P&F model needs to change so that we feel that we can be part of that. I don't think we have a forum where parents can be engaged in schools effectively yet. I think we need to create that opportunity, or those opportunities. There'll be many.
Okay, thank you. Can we have the next group down, Carmel?
Shifting our perspective from the deficit to the strength model is the first one, which many people have talked about. The next one is moving from isolated pockets of work, much of which is excellent, but we need to bring it together and scale that good stuff up. Legislation alone won't do it. It's what's in the legislation that matters. And we can't confuse good practice with common practice. We need to move towards good practice being common practice.
Oh. I think you might have worked out the third session, which was the future directions there. But anyway, okay, next group, thanks.
We spoke about finding the assets in the community. They're there, and finding them and building upon them and using them, and the importance around communicating that the assets are there and assets of families. we also spoke about that the symposium's called Engaging Parents and Families in Learning in School, and particularly for myself as a teacher educator, what I'll take away is it's also about engaging teachers and schools in communities and families. And we spoke about the terrific opportunity that this was to talk to like-minded people and people who are working in the same direction, and the importance of continuing that conversation with each other and not just going back to our own places and working on our own little things independently. We've got a great team here, and we should keep building and working towards that.
Thank you.
We spoke mainly about communication with parents. First one was communicating with parents and making a personal contact so they feel valued, not just leaving them out in the blue. They need to work with. Another point was made that we need to work with our affiliates and organisations to further develop communication channels to use with parents and parents of the future, because that there again we say that the jobs haven't been created for our students. Well, therefore our parents are different and looking at communicating in different ways. So we have to be aware of that and go accordingly. It's in other words a culture change. Establish relationships with parents and look outside the box for ways to do it. That's more or less the similar thing. And new ways of reaching out to the invisibles who feel alienated by the structures that are already there in place at the moment, like our PNCs. What's the last bit, Don?
Just like ESL parents and
Yep.
parents with disability feel often, ordinary PNCs
Yep.
don't discuss their problems.
Like the ESL and the disability parents, etc., who find it very difficult to come into a big organisation, which a school is, and have their opinion.
Thank you.
Hi. Our discussion in our group focused on the importance of teaching teachers. We talked about the fact that they should even have a core subject in their degrees on parent-school partnerships. And to take that further, you could probably have against every competency a part in there about engaging parents, on that particular subject. We talked about a few opportunities to influence that agenda through the standards and how they're reached. And one example of how we can take away that message now to influence is Anne is on the Teachers Registration Board in South Australia, and she's got networks that she can start making sure that they have the message and start the conversations, yes, if they haven't already. And then, of course, you need to change some of the thinking of universities and how they approach teacher education, and that would require a pretty big paradigm shift, but it's very important.
Okay, next group.
Hi. Our conversation generated, I suppose, around the how, what and who. How are we going to get out and get that information out? Who's going to, who are we going to look at delivering that? And what sort of information are we going to get out there? How you can utilise the toolkit more, and more so in professional learning as well. So, thanks.
The issues that came up in our group were looking at flexibility and catering for the needs of all, so that parent engagement was possible for all families, and I guess the idea of maybe individual consideration for all of them, that parent engagement just didn't physically happen at school, that learning happens everywhere, and so the agenda needs to consider that. We had a great feel and simpatico around the language of looking at the underserved, rather than the hard to reach. And another really strong theme that came through for us was about catering for everybody, every parent, not just those that happen to be available. Thanks.
Have we still got one more group? Yep. I'm going to nominate someone soon. I know all your names.
Well, what we talked about was Oh no, we had lots of different moments that we all thought were very important, and you're going to have to help me out, girls, because I can only think of mine, which was the reality touch from the chat with the principal at Punchbowl High School, that it actually took a number of years to really have visible, tangible turnaround, that people walking into the school could say there's something different here. And I think that's very important, and I always continue to say it conflicts greatly with the way our government and government funding structures are, which is to toss a bit of money out in short, sharp bursts and to have no sustainability. So again, to work on that, politically speaking, I think is a big one. And please, someone else, what else did you say? That's enough? Oh, you're wonderful.
Okay, look, thank you for that. You've combined a couple of things there, but that's okay. I'm not quite flexible with my back, but I will be flexible and say that we're going to move to a second go, and I'll combine a couple and you delete what you've already done that you shouldn't have done. Okay? Some of you are cheating on the test here. Okay, so what I'd like you to talk about, what I want from you is one key challenge and one future direction. So that makes 2 for you numerically challenged people. One key challenge and one future direction. Okay, look, time's up, guys. I might start down there. Time's up. And just before we go back around the room for your reflections, can I ask 2 things? One, if you've written them down, it would be really great for us to bring these down for Jacqueline so that she has them. But secondly, if you happen to think of something on the way home, in the plane, in the shower, wherever else you may be, that you think would be really great to feed back, could you please either tweet, and I'll pick that up, and or email Jacqueline with that. The importance of the feedback from this symposium to the continuing life of the Bureau is vital, and it also is to the continuing development of policy across the country. So ensure that if you do have an aha moment in the shower tomorrow morning, just rush out straight away and Twitter. I Twitter under the shower, guys. No, let's not go there. Look, you're bringing me back down to my normal level. Now, come on. Oh, God, goodness, I hope this is not being filmed. I just realised that. Before I make a fool of myself and lose my job, let's go to the group down the front. Jacqueline's group.
Is it on? I can't remember what I said. No, we need a definition, an Australian definition of parent engagement, so that people can have a clear capture of what it is, understanding that it's very hard to pin down. It's actually easy to say parental engagement works when you do this and so on, but we need that. We're not far from that. We need to work at different levels. So we need to have, I really like the stuff Lance showed on the social marketing, Elena's, Katerina's presentation, saying something like, 4 truths, 10 key messages. So messages to go to parents in the home, but we also need to keep the politicising going and trying to get that longer term commitment. And we think also, we really like the comment up the back there about strengthening parent organisations, but fundamentally understanding that PNF associations are sort of boxed in by what everyone thinks they should focus on, and they may or may not be the right vehicle to go the next level, which is not to say that you do away with them, but you might need to transform them. And we liked some of Ellen's stuff around parent involvement committees or, parent engagement strategies that convene across a number of schools. So we need a strategy.
Thank you. Our next group, their key challenge and their key future direction.
First one word is resourcing. The second one was the training of teachers pre and present to include parent engagement. Then we've got a change process to happen, but with us all working together to bring about the change. across all the sectors, not just individuals trying to do it on their own. Getting the message to the politicians with showing evidence of how parent engagement works, because I think that's the only way politicians operate, isn't it? Having evidence. And then the other one, the key future direction we had was maybe doing something like a recognising schools, communities by a family partnership award for the work that they're doing with parent engagement and using sponsorship to do that.
Thank you. Next group.
We talked about how we felt the last 2 days has demonstrated the wisdom's here in the room, and not just in the room, but it's represented by the evidence that's informed the 2-day symposium. And we felt that what happens, and these are my words, not the group's, if a bus hits all of us and we disappear, what's left behind? And so we talked about the idea of developing a national framework with the key pillars for action and a 5-year plan, and working out the areas of action so that whoever comes after us, there's some measurable achievements as we move through perhaps a 5-year plan, and work to come back to, and for other people to be invited into that space of work. So the challenge was sustainability. The answer was an Australian framework over a 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Okay, our one key challenge here was just broadening the mindsets of people across the different roles that need to drive the change. So that's from, for instance, engagement takes many shapes and sizes, and a challenge would be knowing which to implement and when in the different school communities. And another example of a mindset change is, finding capacity rather than, and harnessing it rather than going in from the deficit model. One future direction, again, we talked about many, but the one I'll give you now is, and I'll probably email this to you, Jacqueline. Just there are simple things that can be done now, like to harness the role of parents. So parents already are role models in the lives of their children, and that's without necessarily attending parent and friends meetings or anything. So just tapping into what they're already doing. And one example of that was just with homework being sent home, just making the activity around a conversation starter, and it's very likely that those conversations will start and never end. Yep.
We looked at doing the challenges, and we started from the point of creating an awareness in our communities and our organisations and in the broader community that learning happens everywhere. Learning isn't just something that happens at school. It happens everywhere. And from that, we went to moving people from thinking about the what in parent engagement to thinking about the how, because our group thinks that a lot of people think they're already doing it, but they're not. What they're doing isn't real parent engagement.
Thank you.
And we'd already done the directions. We were sort of high achievers and had already handed that assignment in. So
I actually just thought you weren't active listeners.
We totally got off the topic. Sorry.
Cool.
We're a bit remedial. We went back to the really high. Well, I think it was really me that went off the high level. Something that resonated with one of the presentations, and I think it was one of the people in front of me, was that in African families they spend 25% of their income in education. And I was wondering how in a generation, from my parents' generation to this generation, have we lost the value of education in moving us or giving us different life choices? So I guess that's a long way round to saying that I think one of our biggest challenges is to helping people value or revalue education and what it can offer their children. We also suggested an agile approach to how we see learning reinforcing that, speaking similar language amongst all of us, and for this group to continue sharing so that we have a common knowledge between us. And this has already been suggested really a bit by you, Kaz. Maybe we're looking for change agents in schools, and part of that is thinking about that change doesn't happen this year, next year, but it's an ongoing 3, 5, now something else one of the presenters said, 3, 5, 10 year. And also when people are thinking PNFs operate on a constitution. Constitutions can be changed. It's just a job of a change agent. So don't get disheartened if your PNF is not operating on a particular level. It can change.
Thank you.
Our key challenge was commitment by all parties to family engagement, because we feel that that's critical. Future directions was a shared responsibility in the cultural shift in schools, government, learning institutes and industry for family engagement, our learning community.
Thank you.
We threw ourselves into the future a little bit to address both the challenge and the future direction. So we took ourselves there and decided that we would all arrive in schools where there would be consistent systemic approach to family engagement, where the teachers and the principals were trained to do this, data was collected regularly, and there were great outcomes, including wellbeing for all.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say, Di, you're killing me with one challenge. I've got a list.
Oh, okay.
But I suppose the main challenge that we discussed was breaking the barriers with families and the wider community as well, and getting schools and staff within those schools on board and getting everyone working in the same direction, and everything that everybody else said as well. We'll just get on that. And our future direction said we need to stop the random acts. We need to make something that's sustainable and consistent and delivered with a really good marketing plan.
Good, thank you. Was there any other group? Have I missed any other group? Look, thank you for that, and thank you for doing some bit of brain work, particularly at this point in time of our symposium. What I would like to do now is to ask or impose on our wonderful guest speaker from overseas, Elaine, to come and give us some reflections on what you've seen over the past 2 days, and any advice that you might be able to give, looking at it from an outside point of view. Thank you.
Hello again. I'll give everybody a chance to sit down. So I just really want to commend you on the depth of the conversation and of your commitment to family, school, and community partnership. I've really learned a lot from you over the last couple of days. It's really exciting for me to be here, and I'm really impressed with all the good work that's happening in Australia. So I congratulate you for that. And I also heard, as I was listening through the different presentations, which I really enjoyed all of them, I heard quite a few things that were common with things that I'm hearing in Ontario, and I also got a couple or quite a few new ideas that I can take back with me. One presentation I really enjoyed yesterday was the Indigenous parent factor, and I noticed commonalities with some of our programs, like for example the parenting and family literacy program. Even though it's a different program, I think some of the principles are similar. So for example, Ian talked about how it's not a top-down program, that it's not an expert telling people about parenting or about how to engage, but it's more a dialogue between people, and that people sitting around, the way he said it, I think, is people sitting around a room and talking about their kids is very uniting. So that's something that's quite similar to both our PFLCs and the parenting circles that I mentioned. He also talked about how once you get parents engaged in their children's education, they start thinking about their own education as well. So I thought that was interesting. In terms of new ideas that I can take back and share with my colleagues, I thought the toolkit was wonderful. We don't have anything really similar to that I know of. I mean, we have the school effectiveness framework that I shared with you yesterday, but there's those lists of indicators of home and school partnerships indicators, but the uptake of those indicators has not been great so far. So either people need more support in using them, or maybe they need more practical tools. So I think that toolkit that you created here, I really want to share it with colleagues. That I think it'll be useful and for schools to self-assess themselves around parent engagement. I also really like the idea of the partnership brokers, particularly with businesses. I don't think that's something that we necessarily do that well in Ontario. I mean, there are teachers that have relationships in their communities with businesses and are good at engaging them, but we don't have anything really systematic about engaging businesses. So that's also an idea that I'm going to bring back and share. And lots of other, I'm glad to see also that you're thinking about teacher education and that you have national standards that include parent engagement. So that's great to see as well. So I would just, I don't want to give too much advice. I don't know your context enough, but I think as you continue your conversation and try to move ahead with policy and with defining parent engagement, I would also work at the same time at the grassroots level, trying to disseminate and share those wonderful, innovative, and effective practices that you already have. So try to spread the word, because I think there's a lot of good work happening, and it's I think it can be a dandelion effect where you spread good ideas and it'll. You'll see more of good parent engagement all over the place, I think. So I want to thank you again for inviting me. I thank the Bureau for inviting me, and also all of you for being so welcoming and warm with me. I really had a wonderful time here, so thank you. So good. And feel free to stay in touch. My email is included on that list, so don't all write me at the same time. I'll be happy to follow up on anything.
Thank you, Helene. We've certainly got good value from you, I have to say. Now I'm going to call on Kaz and Peter as presidents of ACSO and APC and ACSO, I should say. I said Kaz's name first, and co-chairs of the Bureau, just to do a final wind-up. And as they come up, I just want you to thank them for all the work that they have done in ensuring the symposium has occurred. Thank you.
This is where I just about fall in a heap. I think it's utterly amazing that we were able to attract such